Welcome to New York Got Game. Dexter Henry is out partying with John Starks, so he is not with us. Just kidding, he's actually working. But I'm here. Brian Fonseca is here. We are doing this again. We are talking about the Knicks predominantly on this show, but we're going to be talking about the Nets as well because the Knicks have a couple of subtly critical games coming up with the Nets. But here's what we have for today's show. Dexter Henry is off. We're going to be talking about the Knicks and their loss to the Chicago Bulls, 124-123 yesterday. We have a bunch of sound that our producer Jeff has prepared that we're going to react to. We're going to have your comments, hopefully some good ones that we'll throw up on the screen. We could interact, talk about whatever's going on with the team that you think is of concern and of importance. And obviously, we're going to bring in a guest. And our guest this week, it's going to be Lucas Kaplan from NetsDaily because we're going to get a closer look at this Knicks-Nets matchup. The Knicks and Nets are going to play Friday and Sunday. And these games both at Madison Square Garden. Both of these teams under 500, but the Nets punching a little bit more above their weight than we expected at 5-7, whereas the Knicks are just 5-6 right now. Despite having a top 10 net rating in the league, they have not been playing up to expectations yet, but still somehow fourth in the Eastern Conference because that's just the NBA right now. So New York Got Game. We're here. Let's recap what happened last night to start, and then we'll toss it to some sound. So as I mentioned, Knicks lost by 1 point. We're down by 22 at home to the Chicago Bulls. Not a terrible team, but Zach LaVine, Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Nikola Vucevic, Ayo Dosunmu, good players on this team, but a team that you would think that the Knicks, who were favored, if you're interested in the betting portion of this, but who were favored and lost that game by 1. But they came back from down 22 with about 4 minutes left in the third quarter. And ultimately, the comeback was helpful. They scored 76 points in the second half of this game. Karl-Anthony Towns was amazing offensively again. 46 points. He shot 60% from the field. He was 18 of 30, 6 of 12 from 3. But again, defensively, and this is where people are going to have their concerns and have had their concerns, and we've been talking about this on the show a lot. The defense is a problem. Karl-Anthony Towns is continually attacked defensively, put in actions over and over again. One of the very first plays of the game was Zach LaVine finding him on a switch, high screen from Nikola Vucevic, bounce pass to Nikola Vucevic. Karl-Anthony Towns is caught in between. And now he's trying to protect the rim, and OG Anunoby sees the 2-on-1. He goes to help, and then boom, pass to the corner, and there goes a 3 from Patrick Williams. And it was a lot of that. And it's a lot of this that we're going to talk about this with Lucas Kaplan when he comes on the show from NetsDaily. Dennis Schroeder and Cam Thomas are going to look to do the same thing, utilizing Cam Johnson, who's been shooting an abundance of three-pointers this season. Like almost 2/3 of his shots have come from three-point range, damn near 8 per game. So Knicks Bulls, Knicks pick and roll defense still looks shaky, still looks lost at times, I would even say. I'd go as far as to saying that. And there was this controversy, which I've probably taken a little bit too long to bring up, but Josh Hart, while the score is 123-121, I believe, the Knicks had the lead at this point, and Kobe White goes for the 3. He gets fouled. Some people think it's a phantom foul. Josh Hart commits a foul that I don't want to say costs them the game because they did have time left, 4 or 5 seconds left. And there are a number of different things. It's not just decided on one play. There are a number of different things that would determine winning and losing the game, whatever the case may be. Josh Hart commits a foul on Kobe White. It looks like he's just fouling his hair. And Kobe White is fouled at the three-point line, makes all 3 free throws. And Jalen Brunson actually gets a good look from the mid-range area. And Jalen Brunson misses. It was in and out. That was potentially to win the game. They lose. So the last 2-minute report came out. This was posted on social media. And the last 2-minute report does confirm that Josh Hart committed a foul for whatever that's worth. Hart applies the hand to White's back during his jump shooting motion and initiates further illegal contact to the back of his head. That's what the league maintains. So there you have it. Josh Hart committed the foul. Ultimately, defend better, and maybe you're not putting yourself in that situation. Jeff, cue up the first sound. Let's get to that now. What's the first sound that we're going to react to? We're going to react to 3 sounds from last night's game, and that will lead us into, going down. So let's play something from last night's game. We have Josh Hart discussing what went down.
On the foul, on the 4-point shot. Did you get him, and where?
Called a foul. Inexcusable mistake. Got a good screen. Vucevic got a good screen to the top. I was kind of behind him. Felt like he had open shot. Just try to go contest it. And
Yeah, Josh Hart doesn't disagree. It's a foul. I'm sure he's pissed off about it because he knows, like, especially in this league and the way the game is officiated now, you just can't crowd shooters like that. You just can't get in their landing space. He didn't really give Kobe White a lot of room to land on top of having the hand on his back, even though it looked like he just kind of grazed his hair and it wasn't like a violent sort of call. But, this is what happens in the NBA. And ultimately, the Knicks had time. They got off a good shot. Jalen Brunson damn near made the game winner. So, I mean, that's kind of what it was. But they put themselves in that position. So next sound, we got Jalen Brunson talking about Karl-Anthony Towns, who, again, 46 points last night, and so far, statistically, the best season of his career offensively.
What you think of what Karl gave you guys tonight?
Karl just did amazing. I mean, what he's able to do on the court, makes it look effortless. And so, that's just who he is. It's great to see it on our team now, but we've seen it for the last 10 years.
Karl-Anthony Towns is, so far this season, averaging 26.5 points, 12 rebounds a game, shooting about 54% with rounding from the field, but still 53.6% if you want to be super accurate about it. 51% from 3. So that percentage has come down from 70 or whatever it was when we talked about this a week or so ago, but still very, very effective, and also 82% on free throws. He is driving by bigs at ease. He's been a walking mismatch. He's making those sort of trailing threes, above the break threes. He's been a true multi-dimensional threat, and looks like he's going to be an all-star again this year. We have one more sound that we're going to play, Jeff. And I believe that one is Mikal Bridges talking about playing against his former team, the Brooklyn Nets, these next couple of games.
You guys have Brooklyn coming in here Friday and Sunday?
Yeah.
Just another game for you? Does it mean something?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. It's good to see my guys. I got a lot of good friends over there. Even the coaching staff that's there, all the way up to Sean Marks and Andy. So, I'm real close with a lot of those guys. So it's gonna be good to see.
I don't know if it came out on video, but the sound came like a beat right before. I was just right there wrapping it up, and I kind of jumped when the sound came on. That was hilarious. Hopefully people didn't catch that, but I just exposed myself. But it's all good. Mikal Bridges reacting to playing against his former team, and that's going to be something that a lot of people have circled, seared in their memory. One of them will be Lucas Kaplan from NetsDaily, who we're going to bring on to talk about this. The Knicks are going to play the Nets Friday and Sunday. Let's bring in Lucas now. Suddenly critical matchup here. Do we have Lucas? We have Lucas. Lucas Kaplan, NetsDaily. For people who don't know, I used to work at NetsDaily from 2016 to 2019. So I used to cover the Nets as well. Lucas, appreciate you for being here.
Appreciate you, Brian. That was a great transition, by the way. I just have to shout you out talking about Mikal. I am indeed one of them. That was a very, measured, classic sort of Mikal response right there. Loves to talk about seeing his guys, kind of, not totally doing the it's just another game thing, but as as we saw with on a different level, Clay going back to the Bay, whatever emotions are there, we will see on the court, I'm sure.
Okay, so Mikal Bridges went for 1 million first-round picks this past summer. As many people, I'm sure, probably remember it. If you're watching this, drop a comment. We'll get to it. Like, subscribe, all those different things. Sometimes we tend to get comments after, but I prefer if we get more of them during, especially good ones that aren't spam. Lucas, let's start here as it pertains to this because suddenly, and I've been saying this, these games matter in a way that I probably didn't expect because the Knicks are underperforming, the Nets are overperforming. Both of them have about the same record. The Knicks are up one in the loss column, which
Yep.
I should not be referencing regular season basketball in this way because it's November damn 14th. But still, how surprising though is this Nets 5-7 start?
I would hesitate to be too surprised by it. I know that the external expectations for this team was, they trade away McHale, they trade for their own picks from Houston back. It's a pretty clear sign to the rest of the league. This year's about draft position. But if you look at the roster and you consider that it's a rookie head coach, Jordy Fernandez, he obviously doesn't want to lose. Not only does he want to make a good impression, but he's not going to come in here thinking about any of that. And the Nets do have more than your average, let's say, tanking team, a lot of NBA quality players. I mean, they go 8-9 deep on every given night with guys that are firmly rotation quality players. And the thing that has stood out most is they really do play hard. I mean, every team wants to make that part of their identity coming into training camp. It's all you hear about. It all sounds good and well until you get on the court. But I mean, if you've caught any of their games, you can probably see it. They play really hard, and that keeps them in a lot of games. They, before their previous loss to the Boston Celtics, were about middle of the pack in rebounding, despite being one of the shorter teams in the NBA. They really only have one center available right now, Nick Claxton, and even he was on a pretty severe minutes restriction because he was injured in training camp to open the year. So that's what you're going to see from this Nets team, and that is why I'm not totally surprised. I think it wore off after a couple games. Like, yeah, if they're going to play this hard and they're going to have this many quality players, it's not surprising how competitive they've been anymore.
As somebody who was there for the beginning of the Kenny Atkinson Nets, and really that whole Kenny
Yeah.
Atkinson tenure, like this is kind of what it reminds me of, except this is going into the season, the Nets over under was like 19 and a half, 20 and a half wins.
Yep.
And I was like, man, like I've covered a 20-win team. This is not like a 20-win team. Like they may not get too far above that, but that 20-win team from years ago had, a Spencer Dinwiddie who wasn't proven yet, Jeremy Lin who played 36 games. They signed Quincy Acey, and that was a big deal, during the season. Like this is not that. This is legitimately like Nick Claxton is on an extension. He's somebody that they're at least bought into financially for now.
Mhm.
Cameron Johnson looks like he's going to be very, very helpful as long as he stays there, or if he gets shipped off to a contender, like he's had a really good season. I love Dennis Schroeder. He's one of my favorite players to watch, specifically because I love international basketball. And when he represents Germany, he's amazing. Speaking of, Jordy Fernandez led Canada to their first medal last year, first World Cup medal last year. So he has some experience in that regard. And then you have Cameron Thomas on a contract year, which he's trying to get paid this summer. So I guess my question is, how does this matchup? How is this matchup problematic for the Knicks? Because I think that what we're going to see is a lot of Dennis Schroeder and Cam Thomas being like, come here, karl-Anthony Towns. We're going to set you in all these actions. We're going to attack you, and we're going to hit Cam Johnson for these open threes.
Yeah, that's exactly why it's problematic. The funny part about all this is that they're actually last in pace right now. The Nets, who Jordy, like Kenny, when you were there, is like, we want to play fast. We want to play fast. Because they're small, they haven't really been able to do that.
Right.
But that makes their half-court offense really impressive. Like it's all the half-court offense right now, which is why they've been like competitive and great in some games. They will bring karl-Anthony Towns into the screening actions, and they have been so good driving and kicking, making decisions. They're near the top of the league in threes attempted. And again, to bring it back to Kenny Atkinson, when he got there, he said, even if the shots don't go in, our shot profile is going to reflect the modern NBA, and this is what we're going to do. Jordy, flash forward 7 years later, has been all over that, and they do it. They get into the lane, they kick out, they put you in rotation, and if the Knicks can't defend the perimeter, if they can't defend Dennis and Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson, who's been awesome driving and making decisions, if they can't prevent them from getting 2 feet in the paint, the Nets will get up 40, 45 threes. and a lot of them will be good looks. And if they make 20 of them, the Knicks are in trouble. And we've seen the Nets do that to other pretty respectable NBA teams so far this season.
The Nets are 7th in 3-point attempts right now per
Yep.
game in the NBA. 8th in makes also. I mean, they're making almost 37% from three, which is pretty damn good, even by today's higher standards compared to previous iterations of the NBA. But they are getting up threes, and despite not playing at a fast pace, I mean, this is what probably had the Knicks in a bind with the Bulls, is that the Bulls are the fastest team in the NBA right now. They're first in pace.
Yeah.
And the Knicks are dead last, or have been dead last for most of the Tom Thibodeau era. And now these two teams are in like the bottom two, which is going to be fascinating in that regard. What do you think is the Nets' biggest weakness that the Knicks could exploit in this potential matchup? And is it just a talent deficit, or is it something beyond that schematically?
I think it is partly a talent deficit. Like the Celtics last night brought that level of intensity that they needed to against the Nets, and then their talent just went out. I think as much as I'm singing their praises, it's fair to say the Nets are playing a little above their heads.
True.
But beyond that, they are small, and they will try to box you out, and they're not going to let you grab offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds, but it is an area that can be exploited. And if there's a team I trust to do it, it is the Knicks. And the Knicks also do not turn the ball over. I think they're just looked on cleaning the glass. I think they have the fourth smallest turnover percentage in the league.
Yep.
That totally cuts off the Nets' transition offense. So there will be no easy buckets for the Nets, a team that already struggles to push the ball. When they build big leads, it's when their half-court offense is clicking, and then you hand them the 10 easy points in transition that they desperately need to put away teams. So if the Knicks win the possession battle, which they're set up to do with rebounds and turnovers, it will at worst be a close game, a winnable game for the Knicks, even if the Nets shoot 40% from three. If they don't clean up their stuff on the glass, if they turn the ball over, there is a chance the Nets get hot from three and they have a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter. They had one against the Cleveland Cavaliers, the undefeated Cleveland Cavaliers, before blowing a 7-point lead with 3 minutes left. It's a team with flaws, and it's a team with strengths. And so the Knicks, there's no doubt in my mind, they know what to do. Tom Thibodeau knows how to attack this Nets team.
Yeah, and this is a Knicks defense has been struggling this year.
Yep.
And part of it is like they have problems that might not be solvable with who's on their roster, or at least who's healthy on their roster right now, because you have a soft spot at the one with Jalen Brunson defensively. That's attackable, if I can make up a word.
Yeah.
And then you have at center, obviously, the big target is Karl-Anthony Towns, who for everything he's given you offensively, people are just banging down the door about like, hey, his defense has really been worrisome because other teams are making him work.
Yeah.
And that's what you should be doing. Like if this were 2K, he's the guy that you would want on all these switches. Like this is just simple sort of basketball. And the Nets have speed, they have shooting, and they have the elements to sort of exploit that.
Yeah. So as Jalen Brunson, the question becomes like, okay, you probably don't want him on Dennis or Cam Thomas, and the way he's playing Cam Johnson. Do you put him on like Zaire Williams, who's probably going to start since Dorian Finney-Smith is out for the first game? But then you're putting Jalen on Zaire Williams, who is a guy that is not going to roast you off the dribble, but is 6'9", loves to cut, loves to crash the offensive glass. So there's really no easy answer to this problem. And that's just the Jalen Brunson part of it, who, I know tries hard, and I don't think he's like one of the 5 worst defenders in the NBA, for example, but it's certainly a problem.
Yeah. I mean, there are guys that if you watch in the NBA, like they absolutely just stand there and they do not care about defense. Like Jalen Brunson is not one of those, but like he has to work so hard offensively, and in basketball in general at high levels, like it's hard to be a great two-way player. That's why guys don't do it, especially as much as they used to, because of the pace now. It's especially hard when you're smaller, and it's especially hard just like, in the modern NBA, even when you're damn near last in pace. But ultimately, like this is not going to be easy. And the Knicks will be favored both games. They already are favored to win on Friday. But, this is like it's hard to beat any team back to back, especially when it's just like there's no home and home. It's just like you're home for both games, and still it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, I think that people, including maybe me to an extent, have been like waiting for this Nets run, right, to fall off in effort, fall off in shot making and talent, for the disparity to really become clear.
Yeah.
But 12 games isn't a huge sample size, but there's no reason for us to expect them to play much differently in the 13th game now that we have a 12-game sample size. And the one thing I would add is, like, as an outsider, it's kind of predictable to me, some of the issues the Knicks are having defensively, because even when the moment they made the Cat trade, it was like, okay, this team still really isn't complete without Mitch, because the whole point is the optionality of Cat at the 5. Like, he was great next to Rudy. They made that defense awesome. I know Mitch isn't Rudy, but he's a, damn good stand-in.
I mean,
Yeah.
he has spurts
He has
where he could
spurts.
be that,
Yeah, and I'm sad we won't be getting the Nick Claxton, Mitch Robinson matchups, which are
Yeah.
always fun. They
Yeah.
do not like each other that much.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. Nick Claxton, I think, is going to be an interesting element to this game as well.
He
And
can
how
theoretically stick with Cat like more than a lot of opposing centers.
right, more than Nikola Vucevic,
Yes.
who got absolutely roasted for a bunch of those 46 points.
Mhm.
Specifically on the Nets, the long-term outlook of this current rebuild, because this is something I wanted to ask about. And in looking at their contract situation, so we know Ben Simmons is an expiring.
Yep.
Bogdanovich is still on their books.
Yep.
Dorian Finney-Smith is functionally an expiring contract. He has a player option for next year, but may want to secure more long-term money. I mentioned Cam Thomas, who is on a last year of a deal. Zaire Williams as well. Like, these are guys that are going to hit free agency. Dennis Schroeder as well. Like, these are all helpful components. And then you have like Cameron Johnson as a wild card, who I don't think they should trade, but you could potentially get a good amount for him if you wanted to. So it kind of like, to me, it's like I wouldn't be trying to actively shop him, but I would take calls if I were Sean Marks, who I'm actually a little surprised is still there. But like, just more of a tenure thing. But in looking at, and Day'Ron Sharp as well, but looking at all this, by the time these teams play again after these 2 games, it'll be late January. It'll be like January, I think it's 21st. One, do you think the Nets are going to have a little bit of a different look in terms of roster construction by that point? And 2, just how sustainable is this early play, and when, or how far should they push it rather, until it's like, all right, we need to look at Cooper Flag, VJ Edgecombe, like enough of the winning.
Yeah, I think it's a delicate balance, because you just hired this head coach, Jordy, as I mentioned. And I can just tell you from being around, it's the first time in a while people are smiling, happy, in terms of like, man, this is a fun team to watch. Man, this is a fun team to be around.
Yeah.
That energy, that vibe, as you well know, matters for a franchise that has not always had it in recent history. And that is really the question. Like, us beat writers, even covering the Nets, we're like, what exactly is Sean Marks going to do here? Like, how much is he going to put his foot in the door and maybe help change the course of this season as it looks right now? Granted, the Nets were 13-10 last year before it absolutely hit the fan, and they won 19 of their last 59 games, I believe. I do believe they'll have a little bit of a different look, at least by the next time these teams play. Dorian Finney-Smith, I think, is such an obvious trade candidate. He's making $13 million, fairly easy, tradable, size contract to move. Obviously would help a contender. And then Cam Johnson is probably the most interesting swing piece, right?
Yes.
Because he would obviously immediately help any contender. 6'9" guys that can shoot and defend, plug and play instantly. However, making 22, 23 million this year, that's not the easiest contract to trade in today's landscape. Has another 2 years on his deal after this. So if the Nets, with all this cap space, all these picks, don't think this rebuild, this tanking is going to take more than a year or two, you might want Cam Johnson around. I think at the start of the year, it was like, yeah, he's going to be dealt at the deadline. Contenders will want him. The vibe is shifting slightly more toward, well, there is a good argument to keep him. I don't envision the roster being so totally different in 2 months. I think it'll be tinkered with, though, if I had to make a prediction.
I think it ultimately depends on a number of factors, one of them being injuries to other teams and how
Yeah.
that can spark the urgency of somebody in a different situation where it's like, all right, this potential four is out for the season. I don't want to name a name and put a hex on anybody, but this person unfortunately ruptured their Achilles, and it's like, all right, we're in and this is the other part of it. We're not at the second apron, and we're sort of looking at this like, hey, we can go out and acquire a Cam Johnson because our financial situation, like we're able to match this contract. Like there
Mhm.
are some teams who can match the 20 million. It's not like uh, it's not unfeasible. If I
Right.
can make up another word there, because I don't even know if that's English, but I think that that's going to be part of it, and that's also why you wait and don't do this as soon as guys are available like December 15th or January
Mhm.
15th because
Mhm.
some are delayed a month. But I think you wait because of injuries and things of that nature. But I mean, we'll see. And there's a world where like, hey, the Eastern Conference hasn't been very strong so far, and I don't know if the Nets like want to go the other way, but there's a world where you're competitive enough to where you're looking at that play and you're like, how many wins do we need? 35, 36 to get in the mix for that? And at the same time, you do have the draft capital to
Yep.
potentially move up if you wanted to.
Yeah. I don't think we will see a win now move during the season. I think that's probably off the
That
table.
would surprise me, yeah.
Yeah. However, I would be oh man, I would be surprised if we're not hearing at least murmurs about Giannis in the offseason. I'm not saying like I know anything or whatever, but the way things are trending, any superstar star that hits the market,
Yeah.
you're just going to hear Brooklyn's name involved in things, which is a crazy, really quick cycle that we might already be coming back to. But I think, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think it's instructive of the type
Yeah.
of long-term future they have because all of a sudden, maybe you're drafting number one and you got all this cap space and probably adding Cooper Flag. And maybe you're not as bad as you think you are. Maybe some of the young guys take leaps. Like this is not a set in stone direction with this tank or this rebuild, I should say. It's not a full scale tear it down to the studs from day one. The Nets, I think, the one thing I do know is that they're going to be open to all options. This is clearly not a mandate of like, no, we're winning 15 games this year. And that's the bottom line. I think we already have enough evidence to say that's not quite how Sean Marks wants to approach it.
And Cooper Flag is not alone. Like this isn't a draft
Right.
class like last year where you don't really know what's going to happen with a lot of guys, and it's pretty unpredictable. This is a draft class that's actually going to be held in some pretty high regard. Like I mentioned VJ Edgecombe earlier because
Yep.
I've seen what he could do in the at the Olympic qualifying level, really, because when playing for the Bahamian national team, he was trying to dunk on grown men every chance he had. And if the Nets got somebody like that, that would make a lot of sense. You have Dylan Harper, who's highly regarded as well. You have Ace Bailey, who's probably going to be one of the early picks, at least as of now. And these things sort of change. Boogie Flan, who's been on New York Got Game before, actually, is a projected lottery pick. So, I mean, there's going to be talent there for the Nets. I will let you go on this last question.
Please.
We got to do predictions. Okay, so, and this is something I'm going to talk about at the end probably, but how did these games go? Do the Nets get one or potentially both of these games against the Knicks?
I can't predict them to get both. And
Me
I
neither.
even have a little bit of trouble predicting this. I do think they get one.
Oh,
I don't think it's going to be the cup game, the in-season tournament game
that's
on
Friday.
Friday.
That's Friday. Yeah.
Yes.
For people who don't
just-
know, Friday is part of the NBA Cup because the NBA doesn't do a great job of promoting it beyond like heist commercials. But
Hey, I'm all in. I'm all in on it. I wish they would promote it more.
I like as somebody who likes and watches international basketball,
Yeah.
and loves just sports at like a global level, not just a domestic level. Like I wish that they would just make the rules more clear for people in this country who don't quite like really understand what's going on or whatever. Like there's a simpler way to do it. But yes,
Yeah.
Friday is part of the NBA Cup,
Friday's
and
part
then
of the
Sunday
Cup.
is just a good old regular season game that maybe Dorian Finney-Smith is a part of.
Maybe that would make a difference. He's been really solid. Last thing on that, I like someone tweeted it. It's like the cup game should be its own segment of the calendar. I would really like that if you just had a 5-game stretch or whatever.
Yeah.
But the reason I think the Nets get one, at the very least, one of these games is coming down to the wire. You already know Knicks Nets. Nets are competitive. That's just how it's gonna go. I do think the Nets will be able to generate a lot of catch and shoot threes. And I think there will be a night where they shoot above 40%. That's going to be enough to keep them in a game. Now, I don't think they're a bad enough rebounding team to where they get dominated for all 96 minutes of this mini set. However, I do think there will probably be a night where the Knicks execution is on another level. They don't turn it over. They win the rebounding battle. And that at this point, that's probably too much for the Nets to overcome. However, there will be a game where the Nets get up 45 threes and 35 of them are good looks. They make 22 of them, 20 of them. Your Knicks fans are going to be sweating. That's just kind of how I see this going. And whether the Nets get that game, my prediction is they do, and it's on Sunday. But even if they don't get that game, I'm expecting one of these to be pretty darn close. I don't know if you have a similar type of prediction. I know I kind of weaseled out of the split at the end, but I'll stick with it.
I mean, a split is not out of the realm of possibility given the way that these teams have been playing. I mean, and the formula is there. It's like, all right, you have two speedy guards. You don't have like just one guy. You have two guards who are going to attack, who are going to create. Dennis Schroeder, excuse me, and Cam Thomas. You have Cam Johnson, who's putting up almost 8 threes a game. Most of his shot profile is coming from 3. He'll be standing in the corner and he will be wide open because Karl-Anthony Towns will be put in the action and OG Anunoby is going to have to help. And then Cam Johnson's going to be right there. It's the same thing that the Bulls were doing. It's the same thing that other teams have been doing against them. Like, this is what's going to happen. Those 3 guys in particular are going to be a big part of the offense. And then, like, Nick Claxton's rebounding, I feel like has room for improvement, has room for growth. His minutes have also been down this season, but is he going to have one of these 12, 13, 15 rebound games? Like, I feel like there's a formula there for it, despite the fact that even statistically, the Nets are one of the weaker rebounding teams per 100 possessions, and the Knicks have done a good job of keeping teams off the glass, probably, predominantly because of their pace, because I don't get the sense, like when I watch them, I don't feel like they're this great rebounding team, and statistically they're not compared to last year. Like, the offensive rebounding element that they have to get those extra possessions is not really there like it used to be. But it's going to be, I feel like at least one of these games is going to go down to the very end. But I'd be surprised if they were both blowouts. Like, I don't think that.
Right.
So,
yeah. And I agree with you. I think the swing factor is Nick Claxton. We've seen it in spurts this year, but he's yet to have like a game where it's like last year, there was a stretch where he just outplayed Chet Holmgren, and then he went down to Memphis and he was better than Jaren Jackson Jr. And then he looked Bam in the eye, and we haven't really seen that yet. And through his career, it's been about consistency. Yeah. Another thing, the last very point I'll make is Jericho Sims is going to have to guard a 5-out offense in those bench units. I'm just putting that
unless they put Ariel Hockpurdy out there, and this is something we've talked about and people have written us about, like they want to see more of Ariel Hockpurdy and less of Jericho Sims, because if you look at Jericho Sims, and I've been saying he's going to get the opportunity because contractually they just signed Hockpurdy to a team-friendly contract, and he was previously on a 2-way, so whatever. And with Jericho Sims, he's on the last year of his deal, and it's like they're trying to see if he can give him anything. But I think by Christmas we may have already, seen the switch. But yeah, and Sims is still getting the opportunity for now. So if that continues to happen, then you'll be talking about him potentially being put in these actions as well. And he has to show that he can do more than just rebound.
Yeah, he's gonna be guarding Jalen Wilson or Noah Clowney. They're gonna ghost a screen. They're gonna run to the wing. It's gonna be tough for Jericho to handle. And if he does, he'll prevent an open 3. And if not, he'll give up an open 3.
Yeah,
it's not an easy matchup.
Yeah, this Nets team is a lot of fun to watch. It's a lot of fun to watch, and hopefully it stays that way for a while, because I think Jordi Fernandez is a good coach, and I think the organizational culture has somewhat been restored after a very tumultuous few years of the superstar world.
If there's anyone that would know, man.
Yeah. I think the next time that they venture into superstar world, and let's say it's Giannis, I think it'll be different. It'll be approached differently. I think Sean Marks has probably learned from 1 or 2 mistakes, or 3, if you want to count all 3 of them. That's Lucas Kaplan. Lucas Kaplan, NetsDaily. Follow him at Lucas Kaplan. I think there's an underscore there
at the very end.
Lucas Kaplan _ on Twitter. maybe blue sky because it seems like a bunch of my colleagues are jumping over there. But they blue sky. We'll see. But follow Lucas. His work is great, and thanks for joining. Talk
Appreciate
about
you,
this.
man. Anytime.
There you go. So Knicks and Nets this weekend, Friday and Sunday. We're going to end with real or not, as we like to. If you're new to the program, and if you catch us later, perhaps we've been doing this for a few weeks now. I believe this is the fourth time, Jeff, that we've been doing this, but the third time we're doing real or not. Real or not is basically we pick a few talking points. We're going to do 3 today. We're going to hit 3 in terms of, what's real and what's not in the land of the Knicks. And we've talked about potentially Ariel Hock-Purdy's playing time increasing, or is he going to overtake Jericho Sims' role? It's not something we're going to touch today necessarily because we just did that, but real or not, let's get into it. Jeff, what is the first one we have on real or not today that we're going to get into? Okay, real or not, Knicks can survive with an inconsistent bench. I don't think this is real. I don't think they could survive. And I think we're seeing this right now. The Knicks with the inconsistent bench, like a lot is being put on Deuce McBride, who had a flop game against the Bulls. And, it's very like inconsistent. Everyone loves Deuce McBride, but I feel like a lot is being put on his shoulders in terms of driving the second unit. Really, the only production you have worth noting from the second unit in that game against the Bulls was Cameron Payne, who made all 4 of his shot attempts, who made 3 threes, a couple of them timely toward the end of that, run where they were roaring back, so to speak. So Cameron Payne, he had 11 points, and he had 3 steals also, so credit to him. But other than that, like, the bench is still thin, and there's still a lot being put on the guards in particular. Deuce McBride had 23 minutes last night. Cameron Payne had 17. We saw Matt Ryan, who a lot of people are excited about the shooting, but that's not going to be an overnight thing. And Jericho Sims is still getting minutes over Ariel Hock-Purdy. So I think the bench is going to need to get better. And I think a lot of people who watch this team would agree with that. But that's our first one, real or not. I don't think it's real that they could survive with the inconsistencies of the bench. They're going to have to make a move at some point to fortify it. All right, next on real or not, we have karl-Anthony Towns will continue to have a career year offensively. So I mentioned this early on. Karl-Anthony Towns, ridiculous offense so far, shooting north of 50% from 3, shooting about 54% from the field, 82 free throws. The points are at over 26. The rebounds are at over 12. He's a walking mismatch for bigs and smalls alike. He keeps blowing by other centers and getting to the rim. He keeps shooting over the top of other defenses and making threes at a ridiculous rate. I think that the offense will continue to be successful. I think what will take a hit is probably the efficiency because it's just hard to sustain. So maybe he doesn't end the season at 26-12, so to speak. But I do think that the career year he's having, there's some real to that. There's a whole lot of real to that. And I think the way he's playing, he's in line to make an all-star appearance again. And, he's been an all-star multiple times in his career already. So that's not terribly surprising. But I think Knicks fans and Knicks observers will sign for the offensive output that karl-Anthony Towns has had. I would just caution that it's going to continue at the same efficiency. But I do think he's going to continue to have a great offensive season. All right, last one, and then we'll get up out of here. Might watch some Eagles and Commanders or something after this. Okay, Knicks will lose, real or not. Knicks will lose one or both games against the Nets. I think they'll definitely win at least one of them. But the way they're playing, and we just talked about this with Lucas Kaplan, I kind of think maybe the Sunday game, but I don't know which it's going to be. The Sunday game, they might have Dorian Finney-Smith, the Nets. But the way they can sort of play in a way that just goes right at the Knicks' weaknesses is a little bit worrisome because you have the fast guards who are going to shoot, who are going to create havoc, who are going to attack karl-Anthony Towns. You have Dennis Schroeder and you have Cam Thomas. We've been saying this. Cameron Johnson. Is he going to shoot 7, 8, 9, 10 threes and make a high percentage of them? Is Nick Claxton going to have the game that Nets fans have perhaps been waiting for? And then you have the fact that karl-Anthony Towns, who we just talked about, like, Maybe he plays, but he is questionable with a left knee contusion for that first game. That first game on Friday, right, Jeff? So Karl-Anthony Towns questionable. As somebody who's had knee contusions, not fun. You don't really want to move them like that. It takes a few days to get over it. Now they have different levels of treatment in the NBA, but at the same time, like if they don't have Karl-Anthony Towns, then it'll be interesting to see how the Knicks navigate that one. Given the size, we might see a whole lot of Jericho Sims and a whole lot of Ariel Hockpurdy. So at the very least, one of the two, but maybe you'll see both for like 24 minutes each, and we'll see who plays better, and Tibbs will ride them from there. But I think it's difficult to say, given how the Knicks have played so far, that they're going to definitively win both of these games. The Knicks are underperforming a little bit. The Nets are overperforming a little bit. Now, maybe this levels out and the Knicks win both, but I would say if I were a betting man, I am a betting man because I work at Action Network also. I would say that this is more than likely a split, but we'll see after Friday, because Friday's game will tell me a lot in terms of whether Sunday is actually a bounce back spot for the loser. If the Nets win on Friday, I'm definitely backing the Knicks to win on Sunday. In the reverse, it kind of depends how. If the Knicks just smash them, maybe Sunday's closer. If the Knicks just survive, maybe the Nets get hot on Sunday. There's a lot of different ways this can go, but I'd be a little bit surprised to see the Knicks just win both, especially if it's in a dominant fashion. I think if they do win both, at least one of those games is very close. All right. That's all we have for this week's episode of New York Got Game. Dexter Henry will be back next week. We'll be back talking about the Knicks during their road trip, because by that point, they will have already played Phoenix Suns. They'll be in the midst of a road trip that I believe is predominantly on the West Coast. And, you know, leading up to that, you have Nets, and you have Wizards at home. So you have 3 games that are winnable. I just said they may split the 2 against the Nets, but obviously, like, they're going to be favorites for all 3 of these games coming up. You're going to have Phoenix on the horizon, who are going to be without Kevin Durant, the way it looks, because he's still nursing that injury. Even though Phoenix has been playing really well, that's not going to be a gimme, but Kevin Durant won't be there by the looks of it. Now, we'll see what happens otherwise, because in the NBA, injuries just tend to pop up all the time. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and you can catch the audio version of this on Spotify, wherever you listen to things. Thank you if you were watching on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, and we'll see you again next week. Take it easy.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.